I've lived in Bellevue since 1986, and it has become very multicultural, very diverse. People come here from all parts of the world who may not have a good experience dealing with government. So they aren't going to come here. They're afraid to come here. To avoid that, go out to where the community members are. And I think that will be helpful to at least start building the trust. So maybe eventually they'll come down to City Hall, but for them to just come right away, I don't think that's a reasonable expectation. How can police officers start to build trust and build rapport? I think the relationship here in the city of Bellevue is a good one. However, it's not good across the country. And so people tend to assume that what they're reading about across the country is happening where they live. So to alleviate that, to get rid of that stigma, I think there's more engagement that needs to happen between community members and law enforcement. As simple as thinking about community members as customer. What do the customers want us to be doing? If one person has a good relationship and a good experience with law enforcement, they will tell 10 people how good the relationship was. That tends to make those 10 people less inclined to think it's going to be a bad encounter. On the other side of it, if a person talks about a bad interaction with a police officer, well, by the time 10 people are told, it's worse than it ever was, and that's what the people will remember, and they'll be more hesitant to interact. So I think the more officers can do informally, building one-on-one relationship is going to be very helpful. I think police officers tend to be guarded. So the uniform is a barrier, the vest is a barrier. Policing, that uniform is just a part of who we are. And so I think the more both sides recognize that, the better relationships can be built. The more we as citizens take a moment or two to just listen with the intent of understanding, as opposed to listening with the intent to respond back right away, we'll be all better off.
Hi, my name's Freya. I come from England and I moved over here, crikey, 1.5 years ago. I think probably one of the hardest things for me to transition has been the fact that I can't work due to visa issues. Although we speak the same language, there's American English and there's British English. And there are a lot of slang terms which take a lot of getting used to. One of the things that I've found really helpful is meetups. The meetup that I joined was called Travelling Spouses. It's women whose husbands, boyfriends have come over here either to work at Microsoft, Amazon, and they find themselves in the same position that I did, where they can't work, but they need to do something with their time. And a lot of the time we explore the city. So you get to know a city that you don't know where things are, what it comprises of, and obviously spending time together because we can relate to each other. Having been epileptic for 31 years now, I'm very used to talking about it, and I feel that it's very important to be open about it. One of the things that I have found is that there is a lot of fear and a lot of stigma attached. A lot of people with epilepsy get frustrated with that, but from my experience, in order to eliminate fear, you need to be educated. And a lot of people don't know where to find that education. I've become an advocate for epilepsy, so I've been doing various projects and just kind of getting out into the city to educate people. I've found that a lot of people have said to me, they've got questions, but they're afraid to ask, and they say, oh, do you mind if? And I say, of course, because it's important that you know, because you're not going to learn unless you ask. But it's amazing to me how many people still have or still believe or still only know the myths that are around, such as putting a metal spoon in somebody's mouth, when ultimately, if you do that, you can potentially break somebody's jaw because the teeth clamp down. Probably the most important thing to do, because there's not a lot of time, particularly with grand mal seizures, tonic-clonic seizures, is to get them on their side. Obviously, so that they have their airway open. An ambulance doesn't need to be called unless it goes on for more than 3 minutes, and if you're familiar with somebody's seizures and how they pan out, then five minutes. I think probably one of the most difficult things is learning all of the experiences, negative experiences that so many people here in Seattle have had. Having gone to a support group here, there are people who have lost their jobs because of it, because they don't want to work with somebody with epilepsy, because I guess they don't know how to react, they don't know what to do, and so therefore it's just better to almost get rid of it, and so then there's no confrontation.
My name is Celia. I'm a student at Seattle University and Bellevue College. It's important that we deal with stereotypes because they can be really harmful, and they can be harmful in a number of different ways, from issues we're seeing with Ferguson right now to something as simple as growing up without a fully formed identity of yourself, or not understanding where you come from or what the truth of your background is, which can be really hard when you're trying to find your own identity as well. I am of Middle Eastern background. My dad is full Lebanese. He was born in Lebanon and raised there. It's not always the case, but we do get hassled at the airport. We get either strip searched or all sorts of stuff, especially when we're coming back from Lebanon. We have to go through many, many layers of security. It can feel like you're being really targeted for something that you aren't necessarily a part of. If you were going to go over to Bellevue College, it's vastly diverse. It is a really welcoming community, and I was surprised when I got there how many different student groups there were and how active all of the student groups are continuously throughout the year. They have a vast number of Arabic or Islamic groups, especially, which was very surprising for me, coming from previous universities and having not seen that at all, and having actually their Arabic programs be cut. The clubs are important and the student groups are important, even if they are just sitting around playing games. Oftentimes those games will somehow connect back to that club. Even if they don't, you're still getting exposure with different people, and I think one of the most important things for breaking down stereotypes is exposure, and the best thing you can do is expose yourself to as many different cultures, people, ideas as possible to be able to understand them and fully understand yourself too. If you find a club that fits one of your special interests, they can definitely help you find friends that also enjoy those same things, help you feel like you belong and you fit in, and so they can really provide a very nice structure for you to feel welcomed into the community. So especially international students too, because they are coming from so far away, and they do have so many roadblocks, I guess, in front of them when they're trying to do stuff such as language and just cultural norms and mores and things like that. If they can find an association, we have several international Arab students in the club, and it's really nice for them to be able to participate in things like the potluck dinner, where they're getting some of their local food and they're getting to hear their language spoken. Not always their dialect, because it is so diverse, but it's a nice place for them to find friends and family and to kind of be reminded of home as well.
Hi, my name is Chanda. I have been in this Bellevue area for the last 12 years. I'm originally from India, and I've been in this country for 25 years. So I think a few ways that could really help move this ball forward, I guess, in terms of integration of different cultures in this country. One of the ideas that I saw that worked really well at elementary school level was that we had Multicultural Day in the schools. And as we get to middle school and high school, I think those things are equally important, but those don't seem to happen at those levels. So it'd be fantastic if something like that could continue forward. And I know it depends on parents, and it always ends up being that, do you have enough volunteers who can do something like this? But having that as part of a curriculum, as part of the Bellevue School District curriculum would be fantastic. I remember my experience when I first moved here for college. And of course, this was a long time ago, and we didn't have access to the internet at that time. But at that time, it was really all that I knew about this country was what I had seen in movies. So when I go to my college or a small little town, what I saw was totally different. I was expecting New York City, and I land in this small suburb outside of Boston. So it's completely overwhelming. There are lots of things that I had no clue when somebody was talking to me what they were saying. It could be a simple thing as you're ordering a sandwich at a restaurant and you hear terminology that you've never heard before, or the accent, that too is, it takes some time to get used to understanding what somebody else is saying, the accent. And it's both ways, right? Most people will not get offended if you ask them a question, if your interest is completely genuine. It's very hard to know everything about every culture. I am equally, if I feel the same way when I go and ask somebody a question which I don't understand, but I feel that I should ask it. I'd rather ask the question and know the answer directly rather than just assume. So the worst thing you can do is assume. It's better to ask the question.
My name is Sapna, and I come from northern India it's called Kashmir, and I was born there. I was brought up in southern part of India, and I lived there for 20 years. It's been 8 months here in Seattle. So when I really came out into that world that I'm into a different country, it felt good because you are into a total different zone, and you can do whatever you want to. Initially, I couldn't do that when I was in India. There are a lot of social, cultural differences. But then yes, to break ice and to meet people, that took a bit of time. Some of the proactive things that I have been doing on an individual level is try to volunteer. So as soon as I came in, I am a painter. So I started painting and I exhibited at Shoreline Arts Festival. But I feel there should be a meetup organized by city or something like that, where people from different cultures can just come and talk about them. Yeah. Culturally, I feel I've come at a situation where it's about balancing things, because in India it's like you're staying with your parents till you get married. Ideally, they are a part of your decision making system. That is something I feel is good here, because it balances out by you being more mature on taking your decisions on your own, because your parents are not going to be with you all your life. So I really like that aspect of balancing things. So I'm learning that now and I feel good about it. I feel more confident compared to when I was back there in India. One day I was dressed in this Western attire and all covered up and hooked up. So somebody was just asking me instructions, which way is this meditation center? So I said, and we can just go up and all. So it happened to be that even the same person was going to the same place where I was, and we ended up being into the same meditation hall. And he's like, are you an Indian? I was like, yeah, I'm an Indian. It's like, you don't look, it didn't seem you were like an Indian. I was like, oh wow, that's a compliment now. I was amazed at myself. This is sounding like a compliment, because sometimes even by body language you get to know people are just rejecting you or they don't want to talk to you. The place here is so driven by doing something new, doing something innovative. In India you would see a temple or a church or a mosque every 10 meters, you know. But here, I would say doing something innovative is very sacred. So I would consider that as a temple, you know. You could see how people have worked hard to get to this level where people are thinking on a basis where you want to make lives more simple every day, make them more good for the generations that come over. That is something that has inspired me.